Bingo! You can't hear me. We should all be so lucky. Can you see my dandruff? I can communicate with dandruff. Let's see. Why can't you hear me? Oh, she's on phone audio. All right, so I got one guess from Zachariah that this is cells. Jack, are you here? Hello? Jackalope? Okay. What do you think this is? What's your guess? A cell. Good. Just go with what everyone else says. Nice. A smart man. Well, the truth is that this is a mouth. It is cells, and we're looking at different cells, but it's a mouth. And we'll learn more about that in just a few minutes. Boy, do I know how to set things up or not. You guys are like, what? I'm so excited right now. I can't wait to find out. I love learning. I love school. Oops. Going too fast here. So you can see we're about midway through the class. We're in the cell biology section, and I've actually split things out a little bit more specifically so that you can see even more specifically exactly where you should be. Oh, come on. You stop that, computer. So right now, we're right in the middle of the cell biology section. And you want to be doing this lab called Exploring Cells, where we learn about the difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. And then we learn about the different types of eukaryotic cells, which are animal and plant cells. And then, of course, start learning about how plants make food and how plants and animals use food. That's photosynthesis and cellular respiration. That kind of gets everything moving. That's all there is to it. So you might remember this from last week. We had this little Venn diagram. I can see already that this class, whoever came up with this class in Edgenuity loves Venn diagrams. And that's, of course, when you have two circles that are overlapping, two or more circles that are overlapping. And in this case, one circle represents prokaryotes, one represents eukaryotes, and then you can see that the part that's overlapping is stuff that's common to both prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Yep. So this is the most basic fundamental sort of division in terms of types of cells. Prokaryotes being very unique in that they don't have a nucleus, they're very small and simple, no organelles, that kind of thing. And eukaryotes would be both plants, I'll put P, and animals that we know. So prokaryotes are things like bacteria, archaea, really small types of very simple organisms. But eukaryotes, plants and animals, much more complex cells. And not only are they complex, but as we'll see later in class today, the cells have to work together with other cells in very complex ways. Like so complex that it basically is mind-blowing. Like you just can't even really fathom what's going on for these cells to all be able to communicate with each other using chemistry. It's crazy. Anyway, but they do all have common things like DNA, which all living things have DNA, basically the plans for how they're made up of. They have cytoplasm and a cell membrane that keeps them separate from their outside environment. And then also ribosomes which make proteins. Boom. You guys are all experts on this now, right? Good. Because you're going to have this lab that you're going to be doing. It's a virtual lab. You don't actually have to get out a microscope, but you're going to pretend like a dog. How many of you have already worked on this, actually? Maybe some of you already have. You're going to pretend like a dog has run through the lab, broken all these slides, and some of them knocked on the floor, and you've got to figure out which ones, you got to go through and figure out which ones are prokaryotes, eukaryotes, and then specifically animals and plants within the eukaryotic. So there are eukaryotes that aren't animals or plants. And the ones that are on the floor here, when you get to the end, you're going to have to, I guess, decide which table they're supposed to be on. So that's how that goes. Just take your time, go through it. And you know, some of them I went through it the other day, and I got one or two of them wrong because I wasn't sure what they were, you know, what the little pointers are pointing at. It's kind of hard to tell. So just do your best. Try to learn what you can from it. Have a good time. Or hire Sherlock Holmes. Absolutely. All right, so you might remember, of course you remember, because you're all the best students in the world, that there is a difference between animal and plant cells. Can you remember from last week one difference between animal and plant cells? Cell walls, yes sir. Well, they both have nuclei. They both have nuclei. That's the difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic. But plant and animals are both eukaryotic, which means they both have nuclei or nucleuses. But cell walls is one of the main differences. You can actually see them kind of listed down here. But plant cells also have chloroplasts. They both have cytoplasm. Good guess, though. And then plants have this large central vacuole, which is sort of a giant water storage tank, whereas they're much smaller in animal cells, as you can see over here. But the chloroplast is where the chlorophyll is used to create glucose using photosynthesis. Good guesses, though. Thank you, Jack. Thanks for being with me. That's true. So lysosomes, remember, like Lysol, they're sort of the vacuum cleaners. They clean things, clean up all the junk in the cell. And all animal cells have lysosomes running around doing that, but not all plant cells do. So that is one difference also. All right, so this is a question you might see. A scientist is observing onion cells and human cheek cells. So you can see onion cells would be a plant cell, right? Human cheek cells would be an animal cell. What observation would this scientist most likely make? That the onion cells have lysosomes and cheek cells do not? That cheek cells have larger vacuoles than onion cells? That cheek cells have a nucleus and onion cells do not? Or that onion cells have a cell wall and cheek cells do not? You guys can say A, B, C, or D, or you can do like that. Yeah, last one, whatever. Take your guess, your best guess, your bestest guestus. And put on your helmets, because after this, we're going for a ride. A major biology ride. All right, so let's see. Sarah and Jack still have to make a guess, don't they? Jack says D. So cheek cells have larger vacuoles, but if a cheek is a animal cell, we know it has a smaller vacuole, or should, right? So we know that can't be it. And onion cells have lysosomes, but cheek cells do not. Well, we know that all animal cells have lysosomes, but some plant cells don't. So that would be kind of backwards. It could possibly work if that was backwards, but it's not. So onion cells might not have lysosomes. Cheek cells always would. So that's the part that is not going to be right. Cheek cells have a nucleus. Sarah's going with D. All right. Everybody's going with D. Yeah, that's right. Cheek and onion cells both have a nucleus. Very good, Zechariah. So the only one that it can be, since this is the difference between plant and animals, is that the onion cells have a cell wall and the cheek cells do not. And that kind of makes sense because plants don't have bones, right? They don't have skeletons. So they need some sort of heavy-duty structure to help them stay rigid. Whereas animals kind of need, you need to be mushy, right? Like a fish needs to be able to mush around. You don't want just a solid face that's just like, that's kind of lame, right? You need to be able to be a little mushy. Your muscles need to move around. You need to, things like that. And so most of our cells need to not have that rigid sort of cell wall holding them together, but rather be a little more mushy, which is why they just have a cell membrane around the outside, but they don't really have a cell wall. Does that make sense? I'm peering into your brain to see if it's making sense, and I see that it is. Okay, good. All right, now this is where we're going to learn about stoma, or stomata, which is the plural for that. We're going to learn about specifically one type of cell. Now remember, the cells in your body do all the different kinds of things that your body needs to do. Like you have lip cells on your lips that are a little different from the skin cells on the rest of your skin, that are a little bit different from the cells in your eye, that are a little bit different from the cells in your brain, that are a little bit different from the cells in your liver or your heart or your muscles, some of which are much bigger than others. Right? Not mine, I know. You don't have to make fun of me. But there's even more things than that, and there are these things called guard cells, very specific things in plants. And guard cells basically allow carbon dioxide to enter, which is basically what plants breathe in, and lets water and oxygen out. And so that's how they breathe out. And it's basically like a mouth. Now, plants create their own food, so they don't need their mouth for gathering in, meat or things like that. They need this mouth for breathing. And so they're able to continually take in carbon dioxide and continually let out water and oxygen through this stomata. But this stomata has to be able to open and close. And that's the amazing thing, is that these cells take messages from the rest of the plant that says, all right, we need to open, we got a little bit too much gas in here, we got to let some out. So then the guard cells, one on each side, are going to become turgid, which means sort of swollen up. And when they do that, they're going to open up a little gap. Oops. They're going to open up a little gap here to let that air out. And the same when air needs to be taken in. They're going to open up a gap as well. And then when those cells go flaccid, then they're going to get smaller. And all this is just, these are all over plants. They're so tiny you can't even see them. And here's an example from our first thing. That was actually a tomato leaf that we first saw. And that was the two cells. It's hard to see, but or it's maybe kind of hard to see. But this is one cell on one side. And then this is the other cell on the other side. And and they're basically opening and closing to allow air and water in. This is what you would do if you zoomed in on a tomato leaf. This is what you would see, is these tiny little mouths on the leaf helping to exchange gas with the atmosphere. Yeah, fascinating, isn't it? It is weird. It's very weird. That's what makes nature awesome. Here's kind of a cross section, actually, of another one. So if it's cut open, you can see how, let's see here. This cell is one side, and this cell is the other side. And as they open up, then air can get in this way, or can get out the same way. As those two cells open up, that would be a cross section. And then that air can go to different cells to allow those cells to do things. So the cell needs carbon dioxide to be able to make sugar, and so that carbon dioxide is going to go into the different cells that are around here near the stomata, this particular stoma. All right, so those are guard cells, one particular kind of cell that allow for the exchange of gases. All right, and now what are those gases used for? Well, they're used for photosynthesis. And now we're going to talk about the two things, the front and the back, the making of food and the using of food. And photosynthesis is the first part of that. Have you heard of photosynthesis before? Did you know that this was going on around you? All right. A couple people have. It's okay if you haven't. So photosynthesis is what plants do, and it's the reason why plants are green. They have this chlorophyll, which helps to take what are called the... I need to actually write this down for you guys. Can I type on here? I can't, can I? All right. The reactants, these are chemicals that react together. So I'm going to write that out here, reactants, which are carbon dioxide, water, and then energy from sunlight. And the chlorophyll helps to turn those three reactants into two products. And those products, this is how all chemistry works with reactants and products. And those products are two new substances that are formed, which are from the broken down products or reactants. And those are oxygen and glucose. Does anyone know what glucose is? Have you heard that word before? Sorry that I'm so ugly. I like to make ugly faces, freak people out. That's right, glucose is a form of sugar, and it's basically a way of storing energy. We think of sugar as a bad thing, but sugar is really important in our bodies. It's just we don't want to overdo it with sugar because it tends to overstimulate our bodies. And then we turn it into fat, which can be bad news also. But that glucose is important. It's very important for carrying out functions within our body. We need energy like that. All right, so reactants and products. And here we're going to see now the equation specifically for how that works. You'll take 6 carbon dioxide molecules and 6 water molecules, and through this process of and some energy from the sunlight, and through the process of photosynthesis in the chlorophyll, you see, is neither a reactant nor a product. It just helps to change the reactants into the products. Then you're going to create glucose and oxygen, just like that. So you can see that it's the same things. It's still carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen, but now it's recombined into a different chemical form, which is now there's more carbons and hydrogens together. Sugar. You guys are excited about sugar. Good. These carbons, hydrogens, and oxygens are in a different form now, which is glucose and then some leftover oxygen, which is good for us, right? Because if there are plants around, they're always breathing out oxygen, which is what we need to breathe in for cellular respiration, which is the next part of the thing. So you can see how this works in chemistry. Now I want to give you some other examples, just so you can see how this works. So if you might have a molecule, perhaps of methane. This is just an example of a different kind of chemical reaction, so you can see how it works. And so you might have one molecule of methane right here, 2 molecules of oxygen, and those recombine to form carbon dioxide and water. Now when methane combines with oxygen, does anyone know what's actually going on? What this actually is? Do you know what methane is? Maybe you may not. It's okay if you don't. Methane, you see, is natural gas. So when you combine it with oxygen, which is in the air, basically means you're burning it. So this, which I would advise you never to do at home, is what you're doing when you're doing this chemical reaction of turning methane and oxygen into carbon dioxide and water. And you don't know that when you're burning something, but whenever you're burning something, you're creating carbon dioxide and water, which seems strange because we don't think water should be created, but it's just water vapor that comes off of things. So this guy has a balloon full of methane that he's lighting in the presence of oxygen, and as it combines with oxygen, it gets to a lower energy state and releases a whole bunch of energy in the process. And that's exactly kind of how photosynthesis works as well, except for photosynthesis is creating a molecule with a lot of energy in it that can then be released later. And here, so you can actually see the molecules themselves, is kind of how that would look again. So we have water, one water. Well, actually, there should be more than one water. With carbon dioxide molecules like this, they're going to form these sugar molecules, which are a lot bigger than this. Obviously, they have 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens in each one. Well, I guess that's kind of what's listed there, isn't it? It's not really like that, though. It's in a different kind of a chain, but the way the molecules actually form together. And then oxygen. Leftover oxygen. That's right. Cow farts methane gas. That's how it works. All right, so that's photosynthesis, and now cellular respiration is exactly the opposite thing. Do you remember where the engine room of the cell is? Where is the engine room of the cell? What is the little thing listed here? I'll give you a hint. It's kind of orange and yellow in this drawing, where all the energy is produced in the cell. Nice. Mitochondrion, or the mitochondria, is how you say it when it's plural. So mitochondria are the engine room of the cell, and what they do is they basically do photosynthesis in reverse. And whereas solar energy was needed to create glucose and oxygen, from the reactants, when we run or break down that sugar by running that chemical reaction the other way, we release chemical energy. So glucose and oxygen are broken down inside the mitochondria to create water and carbon dioxide. And that creates chemical energy that can be used inside the cell. I'm going to give you an example of how it might be used so you can see what's going on. First of all, just so you know, there's actually 2 stages to this, which your class really likes to go into. And stage 1 takes place just in the cytoplasm of the cell, just, not in the mitochondria itself, but in the sort of gunk that's all throughout the cell. And that's basically just a breaking down of an initial sort of breaking down of some of the glucose, which releases just a mere pittance. The 9:30 class will start in 4 minutes. So if you're here because you're in 7th grade, you can just sit tight for a couple minutes until we finish the 6th grade class. We'll start at 9:30 though. So it releases 2 ATPs, which is sort of the energy store, whereas in the mitochondria, there's actually 30. When that second stage takes place, there's 36 of these ATPs released, and the ATP is like the dollar bill that you take around to get different things done for you in the cell. So an example of that might be, it's a way of storing that energy really easily and getting it where it needs to go. And this is an ATP molecule right here. You can see all these balls are the different things within ATP, like oxygen, and phosphorus, and nitrogen, hydrogen. And it would kind of look like this if you had those balls all kind of connected to each other by the covalent sharing of electrons that they have going on. Well, this is an example of what an ATP molecule might do. I actually made this GIF just last night from a video. I stole it, so don't tell anyone. But this is a GIF of an ATP molecule. Oops, look, I deleted it already. An ATP molecule comes in here, and it attaches to that little point right there. And then it kicks its energy, and that actually is kind of what opens the gate. It doesn't really look that way, but that's what it's doing, is that energy is that when it kicks that, it's opening the gate and then pushing through some sodiums against the natural diffusion or osmosis that they'd want to be doing into here. And this is a pump that's basically pumping things in a direction that it wants them to go. And then it's taking potassium back in this direction, which are the triangle things. They're not really triangles. Yeah, ATP means adenosine triphosphate, and that's what, actually you can see it right here, ATP. And that's what this molecule is called, is adenosine triphosphate. So that's an example of how ATP would do something in the cell, like pumping the sodium in a way you wouldn't expect it to be pumped, basically. And it does hundreds of other things. It's like a little stick of dynamite that can be carried throughout the cell, and like if you put it in the right spot, it's going to make a little explosion and move something in a certain direction, or get this protein moving over here, or get this things to get together, or pump this against, however it goes. And there's all these little bits of machinery in the cell that function using ATP as the energy source. And that ATP is all created in the mitochondria as these sugars are broken down. So that, my friends, is cellular respiration. ATP, one of the most important molecules you will ever learn about. Right now, absolutely gazillions of them are in your body, causing everything around you to actually work the way it's supposed to. When your muscle wants to contract, billions of ATP molecules have to release energy inside of your muscle so that those cells can get smaller and pull your hand towards you, that kind of a thing. All right, sixth graders, thank you for being here. I hope you're ready now for your photosynthesis and respiration lessons. And we'll come back next week to continue on with the rest of the class. Seventh graders. So I guess that's goodbye to Jack, Zachariah, and Sarah. Seventh graders, your time is now. We are going to be starting in about 2 minutes, maybe 1 minute. Keep forgetting I have to take attendance for you guys. Let's see. Wait a second, what's going on here? If you could be any superhero, what would you be? I really enjoyed, I watched that Captain America movie. I don't really watch them very much, but I watched this one, and I enjoyed the Paul Rudd character, who was like able to like shrink down and stuff like that. I don't really know who that was, but Ant-Man, is that who it was? See, I don't even know my Marvel comics. I got a lot to learn. All right. Well, you have a lot to learn too. And so I'm going to what am I going to do? Does anyone know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do that. That's interesting. There we go. I can take attendance. That way. And then we can go back here and learn about Lee Redmond. Because who wouldn't want to know about Lee Redmond? How long do you think it took Lee Redmond to grow her fingernails this long? Well, even if you don't know who Lee Redmond is, how long do you think it would take to grow fingernails that are this long? 2 years, a long time. All right, see a couple guesses. All her life, maybe. A while. Come on, be as specific as you can. Let's do this like it's what's that game? The Price is Right. You guys ever watch that? Whoever gets the closest to the right answer without going over. That's what they always do in Price is Right, huh? 100 months, 5 years, 50 years, 3 years. Good, good, good. 90 months. Well, you guys are complicated. 90 months. Let's see. That's 12 months per year. So that's like 5, 6 years, something like that. 7 years, almost 7.5 years, maybe. All right. Well, let's find out. I actually don't remember myself, so here we go. 29 years. Let's see. Lillian said 50, and she was actually maybe the closest of anyone. Oh no, I think Julia was, because Julia said 10 years, which is only 19 short of 29. Everyone else was a bit farther down. Oh, Lillian also said 25. I didn't see that. All right. Well, I'm going to declare Julia and Lillian to be the winners. So she stopped the next year after 29 years of growing her nails, but not because she wanted to. So guess what happened to this poor lady after 29 years of growing her nails out like this? And by the way, setting the Guinness Book of World Records record for the longest fingernails. They broke. Yes, not only did they broke, but they broke in a tragic fingernail-killing car crash. She got in a car crash and broke her nails. And then she just started growing them again. So I guess that's her thing. Anyway, do you know anything else that moves as slow as a growing fingernail? It's pretty slow. I mean, it's hard to move that slow because that's really incredibly slow, right? So what else might move as slowly as a fingernail? Hair. That's, hair is close, but I think hair is going to go longer. You could imagine if you grew your hair for 29 years, I think it would, and it wasn't falling out. I think it would be quite a bit longer than that. But that's a good guess. It's close. A snail. Snails, do you think it would take a snail 29 years to go that far? Slugs, every morning in my house, not every morning, but for a while we had this sort of slug infestation. The slugs were coming into my house. Very disturbing. And they kind of go all over the car. Like you're amazed at how far they go in one night because they look like they're never moving. But in the morning, there's like these trails going all over the carpet and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, it's gross. Well, Lily Sumner was correct. Lily wrote down Earth's crust. And on average, the plates on Earth's crust are moving at 2 centimeters per year, which is about that fast. And so your house, being on a crustal plate, on the North American plate, is moving towards China at about 2 centimeters per year. And Michaela Jones can't hear me. Let's see if we can figure out why. Oh, looks like she's on phone audio and not. Let's see. Let's computer audio. There we go. So this is for Michaela. Oh, that the moon is moving away from us. Yes, Lily, exactly. Eventually, we are going to collide with China. Shocking, I know, and terrifying, but true. Maybe we can be one big country, and we'll be like the best country ever. It's like when Spider-Man and Batman get together to conquer the world. Yeah, it's going to be a while. So we can wait on that for a while. True. All right, let's move along here. I'm going to kind of skip over some of this. We're now on Changing Earth, and so we're going to be working on plate tectonics. You should be finishing up this plate tectonics section this week, and then next week we're going to be starting on earthquakes, because we're about halfway through this class. We got all this stuff to cover before the end of semester. I can't see you, but I'd like to pretend that I can, because I think it's good to scare you a little bit. I see you in there. I see you. Pangea 2.0. Yeah, that's right, Lily. I like that. Pangea, in fact, we'll talk about Pangea today, won't we? We will, whether you like it or not. You just ate my soul. That's terrifying. All right, well, we're going to look at Earth's innards real quick. You see, the Earth is made up of 4 basic parts. The inner core, the outer core, the mantle, which has the asthenosphere in it, that's why I had those letters fall down there, and the crust. The crust is a very thin bit of rock that we happen to live on, but underneath that, there's very hot plastic rock, what we would call magma. You could share your webcam, but it's better if we don't do that right now. It just keeps things simpler, and the bandwidth works out better. So these are the 4 main parts: outer core, inner core, mantle, and crust. The outer core and inner core, because the densest things in the Earth have fallen to the middle, is made primarily of really dense, heavy elements. Those being iron and nickel. And the mantle has more silicon and things like that in it. Now, interestingly, the way that we know this is because of seismic waves, because of earthquakes. When an earthquake happens over here, in this side of the Earth, we feel it over here. And so we think, okay, so if the wave came and it was this kind of wave or something, and we measured it over, if we were standing here, somebody measured it over here, and this is what they felt and what the seismic wave was like. Well, over here, it must mean that it was going through the same type of material, because that wave went through the mantle to arrive here, and it felt the same thing. But then over here, there's a shadow zone. There's very weak P waves, because P waves can't go through liquid. And so we determined, oh, there must be this liquid part in the center of the Earth called the outer core that earthquakes can't get through. And if they do, they get deflected in weird ways like this. So you can see how this blue line here is deflected from its initial trajectory in that direction. So that's how we know it's inside the Earth. We can only dig down. I think the farthest we've ever dug down is like 6 miles. The Russians did it just to see what would happen, basically, because Russians are awesome like that. So those are the parts. Now, there's a very important purpose to this liquid outer core. Not only does it deflect earthquakes or not allow earthquake waves to pass through, but this outer core creates a magnetic field. We'll be going until about 10 o'clock. It creates a magnetic field, and that magnetic field is very important. You can see how these magnetic field lines emanate out from that liquid outer core. So those magnetic field lines serve a very important purpose, and that important purpose is, of course, you all know, no, maybe you don't, to deflect the sun's cosmic rays. So it actually protects us from what's called the solar wind. The solar wind comes and it hits our magnetic field and gets deflected around so that these charged particles don't hit the Earth. At the very least, they would interfere with our communications and things like that, and electricity, but they could also do damage to us, our skin, and things like that in terms of ionizing radiation. That's true, Lily. We haven't dug down, or we can't dig down to see what's in the Earth. We have to make inferences based on things like earthquake, how earthquakes travel through, or seem to travel through the Earth, and what we know about the composition of general planets in general, things like that. I can't hear you because your microphones aren't turned on, but I can let people talk one at a time if there are things that they want to tell the class. All right, so now we've learned that our crust is made of these plates moving at about as fast as your fingernail grows. And these are some of the plates of the Earth. So you can see, for example, the Nazca plate. Oops. The Nazca plate down here. It's moving and going underneath the continental plate of South America. And that actually creates a bunch of mountains called the Andes Mountains. You've probably heard of them. And volcanoes. Oh, thanks, Persephone. So the question is, where would you move? Seeing where all of this is actually, all these red dots on here are volcanoes. And mostly this is where earthquakes take place as well, because they take place along these fault lines where these two plates are coming against each other. Sometimes they buckle, create mountains. Sometimes one goes underneath and pushes up the other continental plate and rubs underneath, creating hot gases that come up and create volcanoes. Sometimes they separate and they create ridges as the magma flows up in between as they're separating apart. And that's what happens. Oh, thanks, Bennett. You looked it up. 4.8 miles. Nice. Your pet is from the Andes. Like a llama? So the question is, where would you live if you wanted to avoid volcanoes and earthquakes that all seem to take place on these fault lines? Alex says Europe. I'd love to live in Europe anyway. That's a good excuse. The Eurasian plate, that's a very large plate, isn't it? That doesn't seem to have any fault lines in it. Australia? Definitely. You guys are making wise choices. Elijah says Europe as well. Good. So if you're on some of these continental plates where there isn't another plate butting right up against it, that can be a really good place to live. Yeah, right in the middle of the United States. There weren't very many earthquakes there until we started fracking, digging down and exploring for natural gas. And now there's actually huge earthquakes in places like Oklahoma where there never have been earthquakes before. But that's sort of, they're smaller earthquakes, I guess, that are caused probably from underground adjustment of things. But you guys kind of get the point. You don't want to live along these black lines because these black lines are where plates are colliding. Another thing they do is they rub side to side. So they might go past each other like this, and as they rub, earthquakes will be happening as they're moving past each other. Rub, rub, rub-a-dub-dub. All right, Bennett, we're not going to talk about superheroes anymore. We only got 13 minutes left. Tornadoes in Tornado... Oh, you mean Tornado Alley? It has to do with the weather systems and the low pressure systems that meet there in that area of the United States. So there's enough heat and enough low pressure systems to create the right conditions. We'll actually talk more about that later in this class. This class is all about natural disasters. We just love natural disasters. So you can think of the crustal plates of Earth kind of like these ice plates that are on the water, right? And the reason why they're moving, to answer this question that I put up here, is that the water underneath them is moving, or in other words, the asthenosphere, the plastic molten rock underneath, is moving, and it's moving because of convection. And as that convection happens, it can move consistently the plates in the same direction all the time. That's right, the mantle has currents, and those currents are kind of consistent. And they happen because of one of the types of heat transfer. Now, one of your lessons is going to go into great detail, and I'm glad they do, on the 3 types of heat transfer. So I want you to think about conduction. Wait, I wonder if I, yeah. Actually, here's a bigger one of it. Conduction, convection, and radiation. And I want you to answer a question for me. Can you get your hands closer to the side of a flame or the top of a flame? In fact, I'm going to go get a flame so we can see how close I can get my hands before I get burned. I'll be right back. All right, thanks for waiting. Hopefully you can see here my my flame. Can you see the flame? I also got a graham cracker because graham crackers are just yummy, right? All right, so I'm going to get my finger as close as I can to this flame on the side before it starts to burn. That's pretty close, isn't it? Ooh, just starting to burn there. How close would you say that was? Take your best guess. Uh-oh, my flame is... Three centimeters? 1 centimeter? Come on, flame. Oh, there we go. I'll do it like that. All right, now we're going to do the top. So I'm going to bring my finger down from the top and see how close I can get. That right there is as close as I can get, folks. I can't get any closer. It is too hot. How far was that? 18? Oh. No, how far was it this time? Yeah, so that was like, I mean, that's almost 10. That's probably 8 or 10 centimeters, whereas from the side, I could get within a half a centimeter. Something like that. It's like 10 times different. Excuse me. Graham crackers. So I could get my hand much closer to the side of the flame, couldn't I? Now the reason for that, why, Bennett? Tell me why. Tell me why. Tell me why. I don't know what song that is, but I remember that from the 80s or something. Because heat goes up. Alec doesn't want any singing. All right, fine. Heat rises up, not to the side. You're on the right track. You're on the right track. So let me tell you about the different types of heat transfer. Now, the one type of heat transfer that we didn't use there was conduction. And conduction simply happens because look at that. Because the molecules in a solid, something like actually this right here, if you heat up one side of this, and actually it is a little hot, those molecules will vibrate, and that'll cause vibration through these, and that's what heat is just vibration or motion, relative or average motion of molecules. And that heat will then can pass down the line, through a solid. That's conduction in terms of heat transfer. But when we're dealing with a flame, we're dealing with the other two kinds of heat transfer. Now, one of them is radiation. So anything that has heat can release radiation, which is simply light, but that light can carry with it energy. So sunlight radiates through empty space. This is the only kind of heat transfer that can happen through empty space. Radiates photons to Earth. Now, the visible ones actually don't carry that much heat with them, and it's a good thing because if they did, your eyes would probably burn up or something like that. But there are other ones, like ultraviolet and things like that carry a fair amount of heat with them, which is why when you're standing in the sunshine, you feel, and it's on your face, you actually feel that heat, and that's radiation from those photons being carried through empty space. And that's the same as when I was at the side. I was getting some radiation from that flame, but not very much. But when I came down from the top, I was not only getting some radiation from the flame, but I was also getting convection. And convection is the key form of heat transfer that affects fluids and gases, and specifically the mantle of the Earth, causing those crustal plates to move. And that's because when you have a flame going, see if I can get it going again. Must be running out of fuel in this thing here. When you have a flame going, it heats the air immediately above it, and that causes that air that's heated, or immediately inside of it, to rise because it's less dense. Because when something gets hot, the molecules expand, they take up more room, they move around more quickly, they become less dense, and they rise. And then denser air takes its place and comes in here, and it gets heated up, and it rises, and it forms sort of a circular motion. Oh yeah, you can do it quick with your finger if you're fast enough, that's right. And so that convection creates a circular, and we're going to see how that works in just a second, a circular motion just like this, where this is like heating a fluid like, over a burner. Fluid is going to get heated above that hot spot, and it's going to get less dense, which is going to cause it to rise. Then as it comes up here, it's going to cool down because there's no heat to heat it, and then it'll go back down again. And then some more water will be sucked in, or gas sucked in over here, because of the vacuum that's left when the less dense stuff rises and the more dense stuff moves in to take its place. Well, that's exactly what happens in the mantle, as there are little hot spots, it seems, in the outer core that heat up some parts of the mantle more than others, and that causes these convection cells in the mantle. And in this case, you can see that these convection cells would act to push these two plates apart, right? Because these convection cells, they're rising up and they have no place to go, so they go to both sides. That's going to push these two plates apart, which is going to create then a ridge as magma then fills in the gaps as these plates are moving apart. The red line is still there? I'm sorry, I don't get it. The thin red line. Isn't that a movie? Oh, really? Weird. So convection is the key form of heat transfer that allows crustal plates to move. And here is some more examples of the different types of boundaries you're going to find in those crustal plates. You're going to find when you have two crustal plates colliding, moving together, it's called a convergent boundary. Actually, we'll start with this one because I think that's the first one I have listed up here. Two plates moving apart. I'm bugging out. Oh, I'm bugging out, man. I'm bugging out. We have something called a divergent boundary. That's where two plates are moving around, moving apart. They are divergent. You guys seen the movie Divergent? You read the book? Yeah, in the book, she's like divergent because she's diverging from the rest of the people that all think they belong in these cliques. But she's better than everyone else, and so she is divergent because she sees value in all the different types of people that exist or something, right? Isn't that how it goes? I like the book. I'm making fun of it, but I liked it. It was fun. Anyway, that's the same thing here. Is divergent means to move apart. Oh yeah, I read Divergent. And so the convection cell underneath it is causing that plate to move apart. Now the same thing might be happening, causing two plates to combine, as we see over here with a convergent boundary. Oh, my favorite part? I don't know. When they finally kissed. No, actually, I don't remember if they kissed or not, but whatever. Well, that's good. You get, except for unless my face cam is frozen like this, that wouldn't be so good, right? Sometimes I probably do make faces like that for a split second. So there are convergent boundaries where two plate boundaries are moving together. Those plates are being pushed together by the convection underneath, and that can cause things like mountains to be created, like the Rocky Mountains, something like that. Non-volcanic mountains, because they're not necessarily creating volcanoes. Volcanoes are created when one bit of crust subducts, goes underneath another. And that's what happens over there in this other convergent boundary on the this side is also a convergent boundary. So you can see how this could all be created by this convection cell underneath in the mantle, or the asthenosphere, which is the part of the mantle where this takes place. Oh, is that why you guys keep saying Frozen? Just so I'll sing the song? You guys. Where's Travis? Where's he always wants me to sing the song. Well, how do we know this is the case? How do we know this is really going on? How do we know the seafloor is spreading if it goes so incredibly slow that your fingernail grows that fast? How do we really know that these things are moving? Well, we know it, first of all, because we have very accurate GPS measurements now. And so 2 centimeters of difference in the Earth's crust is something we can actually measure. But we also know it because we can see it's been happening for a long, long time. So you may have seen the idea of Pangea, these continents that are breaking up. And there's kind of listed in that GIF image, or you can see in that GIF image there that's expanding. Well, we can actually see that as those continents broke up, there's this ridge running all the way along between the Americas and Africa and Europe. Oh, that heart. Yeah, I didn't have enough time to finish painting the door, so I just painted a heart on it and left it. But I'll fix it someday. So we can see actually that these plates are moving apart because we see some interesting things on the sea floor as we look near these plates. And this, my friends, is fascinating. So inside of the molten rock that is coming up to the surface, there are magnetic minerals. And those magnetic minerals are going to line up with the magnetic field of the Earth. Okay, we'll stop in just a minute. Just chill. They're going to line up with the magnetic field in the Earth. And the magnetic field of the Earth actually switches like every 20,000 years. So we actually see that the iron and stuff like that in the crust is lined up as though the North Pole is that way. And then for a while that it's that way, and for a while that it's that way. And we see that all these rocks here are newer rocks, whereas all these rocks over in this direction are older. So we can see that this has been happening for a long, long period of time, that the seafloor has been spreading in this same way. And we can actually see the magnetic signature in those rocks as they're being created. And that is one of the ways that we know that the seafloor is spreading and has been spreading for a long period of time. So we can see, based on this image right here, some of the younger in red parts of the seafloor and some of the older parts in purple and indigo. Crimson, white, and indigo. How's that song go? Standing on the moon, got no cobwebs on my shoe. Standing on the moon, but I'd rather be with you. Anybody know that song? Extra credit if you know that song. I see the Gulf of Mexico as tiny as a tear. Oh, the coast of California must be somewhere over here. Over here. It's a nice, peaceful song. Anyway, there's going to be a big earthquake in the U.S. Watch out for it. There was a big earthquake, caused a big tsunami. Earthquakes cause tsunamis. Blah 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 blah. We'll just go over this stuff next week. There are different types of folds and faults based on the movement of the crust underneath. Sometimes it creates faults. Sometimes as it spreads across, it creates thinning, things in tension. Sometimes it creates compression, which is when a reverse fault is created or else some sort of folding. And then sometimes there's shear stress, which causes bending horizontally or else a strike slip fault where one part of the land is actually grinding and moving past another part of the land. So you can see how that would work. All right. We'll finish, we'll maybe go over the rest of that next week. So you want to finish, let me go back a little bit. Seafloor or seafloor? Did I put seafloor like the wrong way? It should be SEA. Oh, him. Gotcha. Benito Santiago. Oh, where are we? Oh, yeah, right here. So again, you're going to want to try to finish up this plate tectonic section, and then we'll start earthquakes after class next week. Thank you for being here. I'm sorry that I did go over. It is 10:04 a.m. But you did get to hear me sing a Grateful Dead song, which most people don't get to hear. So I'm going to let you go, let you go, let you go and do your homework. Let you go, let you go. Try not to be a jerk. Ah, ah. Better turn this off before